All right, welcome to another edition of Free Arkansas. I'm Andy McNeill, and I'm here with my co-host Matt Duffield. Matt, how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great, Andy. And once again, Free Arkansas is all about a free exchange of ideas to help make Arkansas a better place. And Andy, today we have a really cool guest that's joined us here that is, from what I've been told, is the godfather of trails in the state of Arkansas. So, Gary Vernon, thank you so much for coming on today and on the Free Arkansas podcast.
Gary's the director at the Outdoor Recreation and Trail Innovation at Runway Group. Gary, tell us what that means.
I've just been a very fortunate individual who's got to play in the trail space for the last decade, working for Tom and Stuart Walton. And it started out with a position at the Walton Family Foundation, and now I work for Runway, which is the kind of the parent company that Tom and Stuart have developed over the years. And I'm just really fortunate to be able to be part of this vision that both Tom and Stuart have had for really, it's going on 18 years. It started, really 2006 with an idea to add 5 miles of trail to downtown Bentonville, which you got to think about back in 2006 to add a mountain bike trail to a city park was a big, crazy idea. And you can imagine the fear in the city leadership back then about what are we doing here, adding a wild mountain bike trail system to our city. But the mayor and his park team did that back in 06 and 07, and the city council approved it. And here we are hundreds of miles later with a very successful story.
Yeah, one of the things that I can say, I really like to ride bikes and have been to Bentonville a bunch of times. In fact, I'm going to go do the Rule of 3 bike race this weekend, which will go across some of those trails that you guys put in. But for someone who hasn't been there but has just heard it, can you just give us perspective? And we're going to go back in time, but if you were to look at it today in terms of just what do you think it's done? How do you tell people what its impact is for Bentonville and really for Arkansas? I mean, because it also, I think, has a positive impact for the state.
Well, if you look back 20 years, Arkansas had some really quality trails, in the National Forest, and Devil's Den State Park was really the first promoted trail system in the state, that opened in the late 80s. But if you were a new rider and you went out to any of those trails 20 years ago, they were difficult. They were remote. You had to throw your bike on a bike rack and travel a couple of hours in some cases, sometimes more, to get to a trail. So it wasn't something that was for beginners that would really grow the amount of riders. And what the vision of Bentonville did, what Tom Walton's vision to build a trail network that started at the Bentonville Square was made for beginners. And as you went into the trail system, there was progression to more difficult trails. What that did, it allowed access and lowered the intimidation of riding on a mountain bike trail, which has really changed the way mountain bikes looked at, and it's become a model for the rest of the world, really, where building a trail where you can ride from home with your family and jump on a trail. And if you think about it, if you look at the ability for others to see families and people that look like them, that don't look like the typical mountain biker of 20 years ago, if you see somebody riding a trail that looks like you, it gives you the idea, let me try that.
Right.
So now the diversity of riders and the age of riders from 4 years old to 75 years old are riding our trail on a regular basis.
Yeah. Now, here's how I would say, I'm just curious, you can add to this. So, and I think, I don't know if they're all connected or they're totally separate things, but what I find, I'm quite frankly a little jealous. I wish we had more of it here in Russellville, is one, a greenway that connects basically a trail that families, you can see people with dogs and kids going all the way from Fayetteville to Bentonville. And then off that, dozens of mountain biking, that you can do. And in addition to other things, there's commerce, there's restaurants, goes through every little creek,
That's the secret sauce, is to be able to get your everyday riders on that ride pavement, to be able to let them see the trails from the paved trail, and you can sample the dirt from the pavement, and or you can even push your stroller and let your little child who's on a Strider push bike get out and ride along beside you on a trail. I mean, that's how it's all worked, is these connected paved greenway ribbons through Bentonville. They actually start in Bella Vista and go all the way south of Fayetteville. You know, you've got a 40-plus mile linear trail with 200 miles of paved trail connected to all that, which is sprinkled with mountain bike trail all along the region.
Matt, have you been on any of these trails? Have you ever seen it? Have you been on the Greenway or?
But Andy, this is one thing, man. I'm not a biker like you guys, man. Y'all would put me in the dirt. So I'm really fascinated by all of this, but I certainly understand the importance of this for the state. And Gary, I'll say this as well. A former representative here in Russellville posed the question to me when I decided to run for office or was considering running for office. They said, what is the identity? And they said Russellville, but I think we could broaden that to Arkansas. And I just want to commend you for your efforts, because I think our natural landscape here, and it's just tailor made for your vision and what you're currently doing. And just looking here, Gary, at some of your accomplishments, and this comes, so I'll ask you some questions from where Andy is, big time biker, like my brother Luke, who you said, you know, coming from someone like myself, who I guess would represent average Arkansas citizen who does not bike and doesn't know a lot about it. I can bring some questions from that. So it says that you helped build over 600 miles of mountain biking and multi-use trails. I guess one of my questions would be, you could take us back to your first step. Was this a vision of yours, or who worked with you? And then I guess the secondary part would be, what challenges did you encounter with this?
Well, started with Tom Walton. As far as the Bentonville success, started with Tom Walton coming back from college. He had become a mountain biker and he wanted to add some trails to Bentonville. And then the first 5 miles were built on the north side of Bentonville, and that successful 5 miles turned into 5 more, 10 more, and what he learned when you have more than 10 miles, when you have like 12 or more miles, that becomes enough trail that the locals will use it for not just biking, for running, for hiking, but also we started seeing visitors travel in from outside the region to ride these trails, which in turn turned into a recruiting tool for Walmart and other companies here, because 20 years ago, people weren't moving to Bentonville just to become part of the lifestyle, but now they are. The mountain bike trails now have created this outdoor lifestyle in Bentonville. But yeah, I mean, it's a vision. I came around, I was a volunteer those early years. I was working at Walmart and was a avid cyclist for my entire life, and wanted to be part of it. So I was a president of the local volunteer club and was doing projects for Tom as a volunteer. And then that just kind of led into me leaving Walmart 10 years ago and joining up.
Well, if I may interject, Gary, I understand. Did you actually start out building bikes? Was that part of your
at
journey?
Walmart? Yeah, I started in high school. I had a really bad motorcycle habit where I was racing motocross, and I needed a steady income. So I went to Walmart and started building bicycles in high school. And so I started with bicycles at Walmart, and then 30 years later, I left because of bicycles.
That's
so
pretty funny.
That was my start and end of my career.
So you guys start 5, 10, 15. When was the first inflection point where because I don't know when monument trails or Oz trails became a thing. I hear those, but I'm not 100% sure how to, frame them up.
Well, Oz Trails was a brand, and if you think about it, you said it, where we have the perfect terrain, and it's the Ozark rolling mountains, the rolling hills and the mountainous terrain that is all over this part of Arkansas. So it is a perfect palette for mountain biking. So whenever I joined in 10 years ago, and there was enough trails in planning to have a destination as a region, we didn't want each city with trails to try to compete with the other cities. So let's brand the region was the idea that Tom had. And so we had a company called Telegraph, a marketing company, come in and take a look at our trails, take a look at the sunset, go to Mount Nebo and look at the sunset, the colors. And that became, several different names came out of marketing company, but the Oz Trails for Ozark, hills basically came as a brand. So that was branding the Northwest Arkansas mountain bike region. So that has been a very successful brand. But along the way, whenever you build trails in city corridors, and we had those trails out in the national forest, the Buffalo Headwaters, the Vista Trail, the Womble, the Silamo Trail, those are all remote and national forest and more difficult trails. People were staying around Bentonville and Fayetteville and riding those trails. They weren't going out to the national forest anymore. We have trail counters and we can measure the usage of our trails. So it was pretty evident we weren't going to build any more trails in the middle of nowhere, but we also wanted to build trails in some of the best terrain in Arkansas, and that's at our state parks. Our state parks have the infrastructure. They have camping. They have some places that have cabins and, the lodge and restaurants. So it made sense to partner with state parks. And instead of building trails out in the middle of nowhere national forest, let's just look at state parks. So Grady Spann had started as the state parks director about the same time I started with Tom. And he and Kane Webb, who was the previous Secretary of Parks and Tourism, they came down and met with us in Bentonville back in 2015. And we started talking about let's build trail and state parks. And that's how the Monument Trail brand came about. And that's where Mount Nebo, Hobbs, Devil's Den, and Pinnacle Mountain, those are world-class trails built on state park property. So the brand is Monument Trails. And recently Outside Magazine rated those 4 trails as the best trails in the U.S.
Really? No, that I didn't know. I feel such a debt of gratitude because I live on Mount Nebo and I get to ride those trails all the time. You know, and so I'm curious. Okay, so you identify the state parks guys 10 years ago. We want to build the trails. Does the Walton family have to put up all the capital to do that, or initially, or tell how does whatever the entity, the foundation or whatever, Runway or whatever, how do they interface with the state parks to make it a reality?
Well, at first, even Bentonville, there was heavily investment was nearly 100% at first to kind of prove the concept, right? So those first few trails were a big investment from the Walton Family Foundation, from Thomas Stewart and other family members. But as they've grown, and now I'm a commissioner on the State Parks and Tourism Foundation, or State Parks and Tourism Commission. So now, just like Mena is a project that's going to have a lift and downhill trails, and that's the majority of that's going to be paid through the state parks.
Okay.
Funding. So yeah, at first it was a big lift through the Walton family, and now it has turned into, because the return on investment has been proven with our 2 economic impact studies, then the state sees that as good business for the state tourism. There's real money when you build trails. It's proven here. The last economic impact study we had done by the University of Arkansas proved that the trails built in Northwest Arkansas, the 2 counties, Benton and Washington counties, $157 million of economic impact each year. So that's huge for our region, and just think what it can do for the state and what it's done for the state.
Well, Matt, I'm going to do one more and then I'll throw it your way. So, and I'm sorry I'm jumping around a little bit, but you just keep saying things I think that are really interesting. One of the things that anybody that goes up to Bentonville, knows is that, the desirability of the housing in and around the Bentonville Square and other places. And there's tons of Airbnbs that people have. And I think they do that because they do it because they believe people want to go up there and visit it and ride those trails. And I think the trails really drive that. But more importantly, and I'm just curious the feedback that you get on this, I think that all of that also sort of stems from the reputation. So I can speak for myself when I go places, especially anybody in the cycling community knows about Bentonville, Arkansas. What's your thought about how it's impacted the reputation and changing downtown Bentonville?
Well, I've seen it in real life. I moved here in 2003, and when I moved here for Walmart, and that's usually why people moved here, for a job with Walmart or a vendor supporting Walmart or something to do with with the Walmart ecosystem, people just didn't move here just to move to Bentonville. And, you fast forward, 20 plus years, and people are moving here to Bentonville, to Bella Vista, to this region without a job. They just want to move here to be part of the outdoor lifestyle. I've seen that happen, in a quick decade. I love the fact that I can wear my Oz Trails hat or T-shirt and go to Keystone Bike Park in Colorado, and the staff there are envious that I live here. That's truly something special that's happened. And when we started pushing the Oz brand, you really saw a sense of pride in the region. It was truly visible that people are proud to live here. The locals that have lived here for a long time are proud of it, and the people that are moving in are proud to be here now. And one thing we have noticed, you can quickly become a local here, because if you move here, we have volunteer events. Last year with our cleanup from our tornado, hundreds of people would show up to clean up, and a lot of them were here less than 5 years. Yeah. And but quickly they found their community with trails, either running, hiking, or biking trails, and they found people that are like-minded, and they've made a lot of friends. And one of the things we say, it doesn't take long to become a local here.
Yeah. Well, I can attest that my son met and married a very sweet girl from Philadelphia that came down here, for the, Matt, what are you interested in?
Yeah, well, I guess take a look. He mentioned the economic impact, and I understand that we've had in 2023, $729 million to the state, Gary. That's a tremendous impact. But going back, I guess one of the questions I would have is what makes the trails in Arkansas so unique that is making this such a desirable place for bike riders to come across from everywhere to come to?
Well, that's again back to the natural terrain we have. Bentonville and Bella Vista, we're just fortunate and certainly blessed with bluffs and rock formations and hills that are just a perfect palette for a trail. Now, it also takes a trail artist to come in, a professional to come in and design and build. And that's where we have recruited the best trail builders from around the country to come here and help us imagine, and in Tom's vision, and I've got a bit of an imagination when it comes to whimsical features and all that, because I've grown up from a kid jumping a bicycle from my BMX days when I was in grade school to now. So I peaked out about 14 years old in my mental faculty, so I'm still a kid. But just having the terrain and having the right artist, we consider trail builders artists, to come in and help us think of a trail. And also, Tom and Stuart both kind of helped me think bigger over the years, because they do have the ability to see wonderful places around the world and bring it back here and try. We get to try things. One thing we do, we bring communities from around the country, and we've had several countries from around the world come here to look at what we've done. And one thing we show them is you can put a trail in places you wouldn't think you could put a trail. One of our famous trails is just along a sidewalk, between a fence and a sidewalk, and you can ride jumps on the way to school. We've got ravines that we built trails in. We put a trail connector behind the sewer treatment plant, and if you go to Bella Vista is just a series of ridgetop communities. You've got your neighborhoods on top of a ridge, and then there's these ravines in between the housing communities, and they're really, the ditches are worthless, but you can put a trail on them. So we've connected most of Bella Vista by trail just because there's common property between the neighborhoods that was unusable for any kind of development. So it became a perfect palette to put trails. So when you combine connecting the downtown square to the neighborhoods, to parks, to restaurants, to the towns, around them, all of a sudden you can actually drive here, go to an Airbnb, go to a hotel, park your car for the week, and never have to drive it. You can just ride your bike to dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can go to different places to do activities outside of biking. You can ride to the museum, the Crystal Bridge Museum, and lock your bike up outside and spend the day in the museum. It just really became an outdoor lifestyle that's based around trail, that you don't have to drive your bike far off into the woods, park, and then go ride.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal on that part. Matt, what else?
Yeah, well, I see here it says that the cycling industry alone had $159 million economic impact for Northwest Arkansas in 2022. I guess, Gary, could you elaborate a little bit on, I think that, someone who does it bike would look and say, well, how in the world does cycling generate that 159 million just in one particular part of the state? Exactly. Could you break that down, how that works?
We're bringing money from outside the region to Bentonville. And to give you a little data point, we have trail counters that capture how many rides happen on our trails.
And let me ask you that real quick, Gary. How's a trail counter? How does that work?
When you ride through a little beam of light, you trigger a count on that trail. So when somebody rides by a certain trail counter, it captures it, and we collect that data and get a report out of it. And in Bentonville in 2019, those trail counters captured 862,000 trips in front of those beams in 19. In 2020, if you remember what happened in 2020, the trails became the go-to for people in Bentonville, around Bentonville, states away. They would travel here. That same set of counters counted 1.5 million trips. So we doubled it basically in 1 year, and it's continued to climb. So what has happened when people come to Bentonville from outside the region, they normally come here and then they go home and they bring friends and family back. And we always say you do 3 trips and then you buy a house. It's kind of what happens. But that happens so much. I get to meet so many people that have told me that. They've come here, went home, and come here with friends, went home, brought their family, and then looked at real estate and then moved here. That's happened time and time again.
One of the things that's interesting as a perspective. So I don't know, Matt, do you happen to wear an Oura ring or anything like that, measures your heart or your sleep or any stuff like that? People like to wear an Apple Watch or something.
No, I don't, Andy. I can't keep up with stuff like that, but I know about them.
Yeah, but a lot of people do. So where I'm going with this is, a lot of people that ride bicycles or walk or other things are recording it, right? They're using a Garmin or something. If you go onto Garmin or to Strava, which is another app that lets you track it, you can pull up a map and it will show you in colors where people are doing stuff. And it's this bright blue, dark it's in Bentonville, and if you were to go somewhere else, it's, you get a little snippet, but not as much, so it's another way to measure all of that. I think I'm curious about this, Gary. 2 things. One is it's not just people around the United States have taken notice, but I think international organizations have taken notice as well. Can you speak a little bit about how the international biking community has sort of embraced Bentonville and some of the things that have happened in Bentonville as a result of that?
Yeah, we really started realizing we were getting an international audience when I was called about 6 years ago. I had somebody on email that connected me with a gentleman out of Norway named Lars Jensen. And so Lars called me and he said, "Hey, Gary, I've been hired from our country, Norway, to develop mountain bike trails all around our country. And I've been doing my research, and we decided I'm gonna bring an entourage to Bentonville, Arkansas, to look and see what you've done, because you guys are leading the world in trail development." And one of the things that they looked at, and really part of the secret of success of Bentonville, is the way we build trail for beginners. We really focus on making a lot of our trails, a big portion of our trails, are built in a way that a brand new rider can learn to ride off road. And if you let the typical trail builder, they want to build more difficult trails, signature trails so they can have a legacy behind them, like big jumps, real challenging technical rock gardens and all that. But we really controlled the build to where we're making the All-American Trail, which Tom named, that connects our downtown square into our main trail system. That is made in a way where it's almost like a dirt sidewalk on a lot of
little kids could get on
it. It's got some optional jumps you can hit if you want to go on the right or left, but the main line is built in a way where, a 4-year-old child can pedal their small bike with mom and dad. So, and that's purposely built to grow the sport. So that is different than what most trail builders are doing around the world. So people wanted to come here. So we've had 12, probably more than 12 now, different countries. We've actually got Japan coming this weekend, but we've had Norway, Scotland has been here several times, the UK, Spain, the Netherlands. We've had Austria, Germany, we've had a journalist from Germany come here and did a wonderful article about trails and e-biking, which is another subject we can talk on. But it's just, what is different about Northwest Arkansas and the trails that have been built is just, again, they're built inside the city limits, and they're built in a way where there's progression from first-time riders all the way to a professional. And that is unique, very unique.
Well, and hasn't there been some international cycling races? Now, I know this takes it to like a professional level, but, the UCI, I think, is the name of the International Biking Organization. And, there's been a number of races up there, correct?
Yeah, we've had a world championship, and that's cyclocross, which is kind of a cross between road cycling and mountain biking. You ride a bike that looks like a paved road bicycle, but it's got knobby tires, and you can ride it off-road. That was the world championship that Fayetteville hosted in 22. But we've also had a series of mountain bike races that have an international audience that come here. So we've become, definitely on the world's radar for a place to come train. This is where USA Cycling trains, and we've had Olympic athletes come here and train, and we'll continue to train. So we're building specific trails for that, to again try that progression, beginner trails, but all the way up to challenge those Olympic athletes.
One other aspect, just to make it broader, and I'm just curious if you have a perspective of this, because I sort of feel like that the Walton family has a heavy hand in this, which I think is super cool because, it's an interesting legacy. So here at Free Arkansas, one of the things I think about is I sit there and I look at where our state's ranked at many things, in which a lot of things that are good, we're near the bottom, or a lot of things that are bad, we're near the top, and we're trying to be better. But you would look at Bentonville, Arkansas, and you were to say, how does a city go from what it was to what it's becoming? And it's this mixture of recreation, of amphitheaters, of restaurants, of, just other interesting things to do. But it is where, I believe I'm right when I say this. I bet if we were to look at the growth of Arkansas over the last decade, you pull out anybody that's immigrating, it's really been driven by Northwest Arkansas. And so, and I'm just curious if my perspective is right. Is there a bigger picture that you see happening there where it's adding multiple things, even like the museum that's up there, right? I mean, that's just awesome.
Well, there's no doubt. And, part of the vision that Tom and Stuart both had early on was to build trails as the base, kind of the anchor to get people outside and develop this outdoor lifestyle that'll bring visitors in and help grow the community, but also build the lifestyle off the bike, the restaurants. And of course, Alice Walton's Crystal Bridges Museum is a wonderful draw, but mostly that draws a different crowd, the museum. So Alice has allowed us to build mountain bike trails on her museum property to get those mountain bikers over there to check out the museum, but also Tom and Stuart are putting trail art where you can actually see the art on the trail and you can kind of capture that culture while you're riding your bike, which will help you maybe grow an interest to go to the museum. But it's really kind of what you call a flywheel effect, where the trails are the anchor that's getting people to want to come here, and then you can come here and I met a woman at a conference in Colorado, and she didn't even know I was from Bentonville. She was just talking at lunch about she's from Canada. She went down to Bentonville and she just fell in love with it. And I asked her, I said, what is it about Bentonville that you like? She said, well, the trails are amazing, but it's the vibe. It's the people that are there. They're happy. And I did a little TED talk at an event and talked about Bentonville. And really what I said in there is there's a tangible sense of joy that you'll capture when you're meeting people on the trail, because getting outside, getting active, and getting out in nature is such a positive thing. And when you combine, just the mental improvement of getting outside in nature with physical activity, it's just a double bonus is what's going to make you feel happier as a person.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's really impressive to watch. Matt, what are you interested in?
Yeah, well, Gary, I'm interested in what upcoming trail projects you may have, you and Runway Group and everybody's got coming up that you're excited about.
Well, the big one, we've got two big ones. First of all, we're building a lift access bike park in Bella Vista, which sounds crazy. If you're in the bike world, it's going to be a little less than 300-foot elevation, but we'll have this lift, and we've got a company called Gravity Logic that's from British Columbia, and they built the world's best bike park in Whistler. I mean, it's the most iconic bike park that started
It is. Yep.
25 years ago. And so they've been building parks around the world. So we brought them in to help us design this. And they've also designed Mena. Mena is going to be a lift access bike park. So those two parks alone, the governor announced those back in February that those two parks were coming online. And that was the biggest announcement in mountain biking ever, as far as infrastructure.
Yeah, because, just
$80 million worth of investment.
Just so somebody's listening, right? Like the idea is I don't want to ride uphill. And so I'm going to put my bike on a chair of some sort, connect it, and I'm going to get on a chair and be lifted to the top and then keep going up, down. It's like an adventure going down, Is that a way to think about it?
That's a good way to, it's all the fun without the pain of climbing. Now, some people like the pain of climbing.
Yes.
So we're going to have a couple of trails that you can pedal up if you want, or you can take the lift. It's 3 minutes to get to the top of the mountain and ride down. Mena is going to have 1,200 feet of elevation.
Wow.
So that is going to be an amazing downhill. That's taller than several of the parks around Colorado. Now Mena is going to be special because it'll be year round. It'll be open. Both parks will be open year round, which is unique because most lift access bike parks are ski in the winter, bike in the summer. So they close down. They're only 3 or 4 months long, for their season. So Arkansas is going to bring all those riders that are usually having to wait around all winter. They're going to come to Arkansas and ride, which will be another huge economic impact for our state economy.
Now, Matt, one of the things that's sort of interesting for you as a non-bike rider, and this is just my perspective, Garrett, I appreciate what you think about this, is so I think the e-bike is a great entry ramp for people because a lot of people just feel like they're not in shape to do it, and they sort of view it as okay, I can't go run a marathon, right? Or I can't go run this distance. So, but with an e-bike, it's an unlocking move and it gets a lot of people out on trails that otherwise wouldn't get on trails because they could, they got to spin. So it's still exercise. And because they're a little heavier, they perform pretty well. Now, but so here's the little perspective, Gary, and I'll get your perspective. In certain places like in Colorado and BML land and even national parks, there's for whatever reason an adversity to e-bikes. There's this purist like, oh my gosh, we can't be in an e-bike. But you guys haven't taken that approach. Tell me what you think about e-bikes and how e-bikes fit and get people out on the trails.
Yeah. An e-bike, just for listeners who may not know what an e-bike is, it's a bicycle that has a motor that actually, as you pedal, it assists your pedaling. It makes it easier to pedal, especially going uphill. And the technology they've got in there is amazing. You can do the harder you pedal, the more assist you can get out of it. You still get a workout. You have to pedal, so you still get a workout. And, like tonight, I've got a Monday night e-bike group that we go ride, and they're as young as teenagers all the way to one gentleman was in his 60s, and we all ride together because you have different levels of power that you can adjust on the bike. They're amazing, and they do get people out that may not otherwise want to ride trails, but also you can ride longer, you can ride multiple days. If you come here for 3 or 4 days, if you leave the Bentonville Square, you've got 230 miles of trail you can ride. You can't ride that every day, all day long, unless you had an e-bike. Some people ride a regular bike a day and they take a day off on an e-bike. But that alone, that is a game changer. And not only are e-bikes great for mountain biking, but they're also great for commuting. As Northwest Arkansas becomes more dense, e-bikes are going to allow people to get to work on those paved trails. And all year long, you don't sweat as much if you're pedaling easier. If you're in your khakis and a button-down shirt, you can ride to work and get there quicker than most time when you drive your car. And they're easier to park.
Matt, I got a couple more, but I want to let you jump in if there's something you want to know before I jump in with my questions.
Go with it, Andy.
I'm curious about. I want to ask a follow-up to what Matt asked about earlier. I know you mentioned those two. How much more is there to do when you look at the state and the state parks? Do you just see just all sorts of opportunities, or do you feel like, okay, we've grabbed a lot of the low hanging fruit and and everything else is going to be tough?
Well, if you look at the High School Mountain Bike League, the NICA program, that's nationwide, and Arkansas now has 1,000 kids that are riding for their school. They're riding mountain bikes, racing mountain bikes for their school. And that is such a wonderful program. And one thing that we didn't touch on is what these trails do is they get children outside on their bikes or on a hike or on a run, away from their screens, away from those video games, those addictive phones. It is an epidemic, and these trails are really helping give kids a better option than staying home inside their bedroom. So this high school mountain bike league, NICA, is super powerful when it comes to getting those kids to be able to do something for their schools. A lot of the NICA mountain bikers may not be a ball sports or any kind of school sport athlete, but they're racing bicycles and get to wear their school's jersey. So it's amazing. But what we need to do is add more trails around the state in communities. Again, adding access. If we can take all these smaller communities, all communities around the state, and convince the city leadership, instead of adding another ball field or tennis court or a swimming pool, what about looking into trails? You can build a 12-mile trail system for $350,000 to $600,000, depending on what you do with it. And that's a really easy investment that will transform your community and get people outdoors.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What a trail will do, instead of just having kids play ball and parents sit on a bench and watch, the whole family gets outdoors and gets on the trail. So trails are definitely something that every community in this state needs to look into, and the return on investment is proven. We've got multiple economic impact studies, and it will help not only physical health, but mental health for your community.
Yeah, I know here at Russellville, we're doing exactly what you guys have led the way on, which is where we've identified places, in between neighborhoods that really are not suitable to build a home on. There's just, you wouldn't build it on, like you said, it's rocky or craggy, or maybe it's a little steep, but along there we can put a trail and then connect the various places in the city together and make it where people can walk on it, bring their dog on it, and have access to it. And so, I think that the fact that, that you guys let e-bikes on all of it is a really powerful, because Matt, I know you said you haven't ridden, but I'm telling you, I think you'd have a really good time doing it. Here's my last question, just because I'm personally interested in it. And I understand that you guys invested, if I have this right, up in Horseshoe Canyon Ranch up in the Jasper area, which as a former rock climber, I've been to many, many times. And Matt, this is straight up Highway 7, this beautiful little valley. It was so cool. You could camp up there. What are you going to do there?
Well, it's nearly done, but it's going to be, Mount Nebo was my favorite trail in the state, Andy, and Horseshoe Canyon Ranch is now my favorite trail in the state. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah. When can we go ride up there? Let's
go soon. Well, Horseshoe Canyon Ranch. I mean, it's 650 acres of one of the most beautiful pieces of property in the state. And Barry Johnson lived there for 20 years, or had that place for 20 years, and made a dude ranch out of it with horses, and allowed climbers to come in and bolt climbing routes, and it became a destination for climbing. And so Tom and Stuart bought that property from Barry because Barry was ready to retire and get out of the dude ranch business. So what Barry said is, the dude ranch business is tough. He said he recommends getting rid of the horses. So we got rid of the horses and built mountain bike trails. So instead of riding a horse when you come there, you can ride a mountain bike. And that is pretty rugged terrain, as you know. So we built some really cool trails there, and some of them are really challenging, but we've also built some beginner-friendly networks. But we rent e-bikes there because it allows you to be able to climb up and down those hills a lot easier. And I really saw the magic of the e-bike last year when we had about 70 eighth graders come for kind of a retreat from their school. We saw brand new mountain bikers, kids who have never ridden mountain bikes, get on those e-bikes and ride our trails.
That's awesome.
They loved it.
So it's open. Is it open?
It's open. It's they've got cabins, camping, mountain bike trail, climbing, zip lining. It's right near the Buffalo River. You can come there and stay and go float the river as well. It's the best place to take your family or your friends or your loved one and just spend a few days there. I mean, it's a magical place, and it's so beautiful. I was just there last Thursday.
When you throw in the mountain biking, and not only that, the gravel biking through all the Ozark and the Ouachita National Forest, which is substantial and very awesome, the road biking, rafting, fishing, hunting, it's really one of the gems of Arkansas. There's just no question about it, the outdoor activity that's here. And so thank you for all that you do with that. Matt, you want to close us down?
Yeah, sure. Well, Gary, thank you so much for taking the time to come on Free Arkansas today.
Matt, good to meet you. And Andy, good to see you. Let's go ride.
Yeah, let's go ride. And again, you can comment on all of our social media channels. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.